afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I want to say thank you and welcome to our ScrumPulse webinar, Strategic Scrum and Agility as a Choice. My name is Eric Nayberg. I'm Vice President of Marketing for Scrum.org, and I want to welcome Ravi Verma, who's going to present to us today. Next slide, Ravi.
Thanks, Eric.
So a little bit about who we are. So Scrum.org, the home of Scrum, run by the creator Scrum, Ken Schwaber, and with a focus really on software and software delivery. We continue to really look to help organizations and individuals improve the way they deliver and develop software. The ScrumPulse webinar series is free. Lots of different content around those areas, around software delivery, around implementing and using Scrum, anything from a beginner to someone trying to scale it to multiple teams and everything in between. Feel free to come check it out on our website as well. There's lots of old recorded webcasts that are out there at scrum.org/scrumpulse or out on our YouTube channel. And check out the tweets as this is going on, as people will be likely tweeting and talking about what's happening today. Next slide. So some quick guidelines. Your microphones are muted, so if you have questions, please ask them in the question box on your GoToWebinar panel. You can also tweet at us at scrum.org with hashtag ScrumPulse. And with that, next slide, I'll introduce Ravi and take it away, Ravi.
Thanks, Eric. So hello everyone, my name is Ravi Verma. As Eric mentioned, I'm a professional Scrum trainer and evidence-based management consultant with Scrum.org. I'm the founder and CEO of my Agile consulting firm, Smooth Apps. I've got about 18 plus years in software delivery, started off as a developer, and then started moving into leadership roles and coaching roles later on. Some things I'm really proud about, proud to partner with my fellow Scrum.org trainers to create the software code of ethics, and if you haven't read that, would love for you to read, post your comments, and help us improve it. After a recent engagement, I wrote the Agile Manifesto and Agile Principles, which was very cathartic. So if you have a sense of humor, please check that out. Let me know what you think. And I've also got a series of short videos called Agile on my YouTube channel. On a personal level, I love binge watching crime shows. So right now I'm watching Hawaii Five-0 on Netflix, and then usually I watch them on mute with closed captioning, which is one of the many weird things about me. And I'm a vegetarian who hates most green vegetables. So anyway, today I want to tell you, share some of my thoughts on two areas. One is strategic Scrum. So let's dive into part one of our webinar. And I call it Sleepless in CXO Land, how smart CXOs beat stress with strategic Scrum. So usually when I go into client engagements, I try to get a gut check in terms of what is the level of alignment or lack thereof between the executives and the Scrum team. So usually many companies that invite me to help them, the CXOs think Scrum is for millions. It's very tactical. I'm going to spend a bunch of money. I'll introduce some Agile tool, bring in some consulting company, some Agile coaches, and go fix the minions and everything will be fine. We're going to be Agile. And the Scrum teams usually say, my CXOs, they just don't get it, right? They're command and control, waterfall. And they're all often disconnected. So I try to ask them, hey, on a fist to 5, 0 to 5, where 5 is complete alignment and 0 is complete misalignment, what do you guys think is the level of alignment and shared understanding between the work that the teams are doing and the work that the CXOs care about, right? And usually the value is very low. But who cares? Why bother? Right? Here's where it starts having some impacts. So sometimes the Scrum teams are getting jerked around. There is a flavor of the month feature or a customer or a prospect. And so 1 month or 1 sprint, the most important feature in the company is A, and they put their heart and soul and blood and sweat and tears into it. And then suddenly there's the next sprint or the next month is something else. So they get disconnected they get whiplash, like, why are we doing this? What do these guys want? And sometimes they get demotivated, like we're working so hard, but we have no clue, did the work that we do last sprint or last month did it truly make a difference to our company, to our customers? And sometimes they have to make design trade-offs, coding trade-offs, testing trade-offs, but they don't have a line of sight visibility into what are the domino effects or unintended consequences of the trade-offs that they are making. How does that impact the big picture? And the most important thing is when we introduce Scrum, as Ken often says, Scrum will create ruthless and relentless transparency into the pre-existing dysfunctions in your organization. And Scrum is not going to remove those dysfunctions. It's going to give you a choice. And it's not good or bad. It's value neutral. What you do with that choice is up to you, but there will be consequences. So choose wisely. So when I go in and start coaching, usually there are a lot of impediments that are revealed, and some of the impediments can be removed by the teams through self-organization, and others are beyond their sphere of organization or control. So they ask for executives, hey, can you please help us? And on the other side, the executives are like, I'm doing real work here, right? So don't bother me with these stupid impediments. What's in it for me? Why should I care? And the executives are like, why are these Scrum teams? Why do these developers, why do they do what they do? Don't they get the big picture? And so what happens is there is this chasm of needless suffering in the name of Scrum, and that really, really bothers me. So I started thinking, is there something that I can do? What has worked well in some of my engagements? And can I share some of those ideas with others? So typically, I begin with a C-level workshop, and in a recent example, which was the inspiration of this presentation and a blog, was I was at a client. We had the CEO, the COO, CTO, and a member of board of directors. And many of the things that that I'm going to share with you, we completed in 3 consecutive business days in terms of the strategic Scrum approach. And then we shared in a company kind of all hands meeting on Friday, and we got quick feedback to figure out, is it resonating or not, and what course correction can we do? And then since then, every month, my clients actually have a monthly organizational level review where they implement the ideas that I'm sharing here, okay? And there was ruthless and relentless time boxing, so I knew that the time was precious, and I wanted them to accomplish as much as they could. So within 3 days, under relentless time boxing, we were able to accomplish quite a lot. So the first thing that I encourage my clients to do at the C-level is clarify the big, hairy, audacious goal. So this is from the book Built to Last. It's a unifying kind of focal point. It gives a very clear sense of purpose. And if you're hiring people whose personal sense of purpose is aligned with the company's sense of purpose, then it can be really compelling and inspiring. Some examples were Solar Aid. We want to eradicate the kerosene lamp from Africa. We want to cure blood cancer through marrow donation. We want to make the world more open and connected. We want to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. We want to enable human exploration and settlement of Mars. So for me, one of the things that's common with all of these is that these are very crisp, short, to the point. And if I am passionate about any of these areas, I think it will either attract me or it will repel me, but usually it will not leave me confused or ambiguous or ambivalent about what is this company all about. So I encourage my clients to start with a very compelling, clear, crisp, big, hairy, audacious goal. Now, from an inspiration perspective, it is necessary but not sufficient to have an inspiring goal. People must feel that it is realistic and achievable, and this is where the strategy comes in. And Greg Dittins has written a really nice blog, and he talks about the strategic pillars. So what he says is, these pillars provide the strength and the support, and they are essential for accomplishing the goal. And if you remove any one of the pillars, the whole house collapses, okay? So let's take an example. Let's imagine we are talking about Facebook. So Facebook may have a 4-pronged strategy. Number 1, they want to get is acquisition, okay? Get more people to join Facebook. Number 2 is make them log on to Facebook and keep coming back, post contents, live videos, share, engage. Now, pillar number 3 might be, okay, let's start mining the user behavior. Let's figure out what these guys are doing. And then the most important possibly is monetization. Now let's sell this information and try to make money out of it. And the bedrock has got to be culture. It has to be talent. hire and inspire and retain people who have aligned goals and shared values. And you create a company culture and systems and policies that will enable these pool of talented people to help accomplish the company goal. Okay, so I feel that visually it's important to have a very simple strategy that you can express and that people can absorb and that they believe in. Okay, this is realizable, this is achievable, because we want to have a winnable game. One approach that you may use to communicate your strategy, which could be at a company level, at a product line level, at a product level, is using a canvas. There are many canvases out there. One of my favorite ones is Roman Pickler's extended product vision canvas. You have the lean canvas, you have the business model canvas, and the value prop canvas. There are lots of canvases, but my invitation to you is, once you've created your BHAG, capture and communicate the company's strategy in a crisp way using one of the canvases. So now we've got the BHAG, we've got the strategy. Now we need to figure out, if we have a pool of funds, how do we invest the funds, right? So what I typically do with my clients is, I say, okay, you've got these 4 strategic pillars. I'll give you 10 points. Distribute 10 points across these 4 pillars that would reflect how much money you would distribute to each of these, to the execution of each of these pillars, right? So, and there are some rules. You can't use decimal points, and you can't take the easy way out by saying 2.5 points for each, right? So these serve as some kind of guidelines for portfolio investment, right? And this approach can apply recursively. So imagine you're Microsoft, right? So Microsoft may have some strategic pillars, investing in the cloud, maybe the platforms, maybe operating systems, and so on. So Microsoft could apply this approach at the company level. They could apply at the Microsoft Office level. They could apply perhaps at a product level, at PowerPoint level, and so on, right? One book that I really like that has influenced me from portfolio management perspective is a book by Jochen Krebs. So, if I were to do this with a client, the clients may come up with some portfolio investment guidelines to say, we're going to spend 40% on increasing engagement, 30% on mining, 20% monetization, and in the Facebook case, maybe we've got 1 billion users already, so acquisition is not that important right now. Okay, so we finished our investment portfolio kind of allocation, and this is important from a Scrum perspective because we want our product owners. Sometimes our product owners can find themselves in adversarial conversations where they're fighting for more investment dollars for their specific product, and that kind of behavior may create sub-optimization at the product level. But having this kind of clarity from the C-level and having a cultural clarity to say we value optimization of the whole and not optimization of the part at the cost of the whole, perhaps it can set some expectations between the different product owners to say, okay, this is how much we are likely to get, and that's okay, because it's not about my product, it's about my company. Okay. The next thing I like is setting up wildly important goals. So this is from the Franklin Covey 4 Disciplines of Execution. I was introduced to this framework by one of my fellow PhDs, Mark Norman. And what I like about wildly important goals is that there is a very crisp and measurable format. And the format is increase or decrease some metric from some current value to the target value by a target date. And this creates absolute clarity in the minds of people who are playing the game in terms of what's the scoreboard and what's the end outcome we are trying to accomplish. Okay. What I typically do, what Mark and I typically do is, when we go into client sites, we will complement the 4 disciplines of execution with the Scrum.org evidence-based management framework, which has some 3 key value areas and some suggested KPIs that you might consider as you try to create some measurable goals that you can empirically manage through the adoption of Scrum. So at this point, we've got our BHAG, we've got our strategic pillars, we've got guidelines of portfolio investment, we've created a nice scoreboard, we've created the wildly important goals. Now let's create a scoreboard. So this is based on a sample scoreboard that Mark and I created for one of our former clients. So here you can see in Excel, I've created a mock-up. You've got a scoreboard for acquisition, engagement, monetization, and mining, right? And then this can be like a release equivalent or analogous to a release burn up or burn down chart, which is constantly telling you how are you doing relative to the ideal burn up or ideal burn down, and what course corrections you may consider to minimize undesirable deviation. So now let's talk about what experiments are we going to conduct, right? What features are we going to roll out so that we can accomplish our target goals? So I combined this idea of user story mapping from Jeff Patton. He's got tons of good free resources on his website. At the portfolio level, so you make, have some kind of a workshop where you start identifying from a strategy perspective, if you were to execute on your strategy, what are the kind of features or backlog items that may be required for you to implement. And these are like big rocks, very coarse-grained, large, big-ticket kind of items. Now that you have created this kind of a portfolio map, now you start flattening it and you create like a backlog at the company level, right? And so based on typical product management techniques, you are optimizing or ranking based on cost, on benefit, on risk and reward, and so on. So now you flatten your backlog, and now you have to sequence these experiments. So you can create a roadmap to say, release 1 or Q1, we're going to do this, Q2, we're going to do that, and the farther you go, the larger the time horizon becomes, the less reliable the forecasts become, okay? And now it's time to execute. So I think this is where the rubber meets the road. You can use a framework like Scrum at the team level. If you have many teams, you can use a scaling framework like Nexus or some other framework. But I think what's most important is and the product owner plays a very important role here, is that you have to connect the line between what the teams are working on a daily basis, help them understand how the topics discussed in the daily Scrum and the inspect and adapt is related to the sprint plan, and that has a domino effect on release plan, the product roadmap, the portfolio, the scoreboards, the strategic pillars, and the big, hairy, audacious goal. Because from an intrinsic motivation perspective, all the team members, they want to, as human beings, we want to have a sense of purpose, which is the BHAG. We want to have a sense of choice, which is what we get. Scrum allows us to pick and choose the tasks that we want to contribute towards, and then the release plan and the sprint plan and the sprint review and so on, and the scoreboard, they help us get a sense of progress, right? And also when we look at our own competencies, we get a sense of mastery over our own capabilities, right? So if you're not able to connect the dots between what the team is working on at the daily Scrum level and sprint plan, if you're not able to connect it to the scoreboard and the strategy and the BHAG, people may get demotivated and they may leave work with a sense of confusion or demoralization to say, did I really add value or not? And why am I doing what I'm doing? I think this is the most important aspect of Scrum, which is very often neglected. Scrum is a vehicle to deploy experiments into the market, and the single source of truth is the market. That's what Gunther, one of our Agile thought leaders on PhD, says. There's only one source of truth. People vote with their checkbooks. And no matter how smart you might be, you just don't know which hypothesis is right and which is not. The only way to test it is deploy. And what I find very often in my clients is the sprint review is one directional, where the team is reviewing what they have, the PSI, the shippable increment they have created. Very rarely is it that I go to a client and I find that they're looking at the scoreboard and in reviewing what the market is telling them, and then how can they use empirical data and evidence to adapt the future course. So this learning, the two-way learning, I think is the most important. And this kind of brings us to the end of our kind of the 10-step approach that I'm proposing for kind of strategic Scrum, which will help connect the life of the daily life, day-to-day life of the developer, their impediments, to the life of the CXO and what they deeply care about. One caveat is this is not some kind of a waterfall big bang approach. Ideally, this is the kind of stuff that you should be doing. Steps number 1 to 8 are things that you should be incrementally doing as part of your backlog refinement. So I made a quick pass through a lot of content, and maybe we can take a few questions before we go into part 2 of our webinar. So Eric, are there any questions?
Yes, we have one question that came in so far, Ravi. Fist of 5, who do you ask? that to? What teams? Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, so usually, when I go into a client engagement, I will typically have kind of two sets of conversations. One is at the C-level, and I will ask them, what do you think at the C-level perspective? What is your sense of alignment between what you're doing and what the teams are doing? And then from a safety perspective, I will have a manager-free conversation with the teams, and then I ask them the same question. And it's very interesting to compare and contrast the perspectives of the two groups of people.
Great. So another question that's come in. What's your experience utilizing Scrum outside of software? And I don't know if you've done this or not, but do you have some experience utilizing Scrum outside of software?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Recently, I did a product owner course, and then one of my students actually works in a company that designs curriculum for schools, and he went and applied the values and principles and the events and activities of Scrum in curriculum design. And he was saying that he reduced the cycle time for his company from maybe 6 months to like 6 weeks or something, ridiculous reduction by application of Scrum. So there was a situation where prior to attending the product owner course, there were situations where entire school districts or states were waiting because they did not have the curriculum that they were depending on, because they were using a waterfall approach. And he goes to the PO class, really sharp person, goes back, starts applying, and dramatically cuts down the cycle time. So this is just one of many examples. Many of my colleagues have also worked with companies where they have taken some of these principles and values and applied it in a non-software context. And I think what Ken often do, what I remember Ken saying is, look, Scrum was primarily intended and designed for use in a software setting, but if you feel that if it can add value in a non-software setting, I mean, have at it.
Great. So another question, Ravi, and then we can probably move forward, and maybe you address this in the next part, but how is this related to evidence-based management?
For me, the biggest connection to evidence-based management are these scoreboards. So if you look at the WIGs and the scoreboards, level 4 and level 5, evidence-based management, I feel, elevates empiricism to the company level, to the business level. So typically, when we talk about Scrum, the metrics that we use to kind of measure the efficacy of Scrum or measure agility are suboptimal metrics like velocity. These are easy to understand, but they're easy to game, and they create unintended consequences. What I love about evidence-based management is that Scrum.org and Ken have given a lot of thought in terms of choosing some illustrative metrics or KPIs that are very hard to game and that are closer to indicators of true business agility. So whether it is revenue per employee or whether it is cycle time, the ability to conceive value, the ability to deliver value or sustain value, employee sat, customer sat, these are things that you can't game. And I feel that these are true leading and lagging indicators of business agility. So where evidence-based management fits in here are at steps 4 and 5. Okay.
Yep. So we've got more questions coming in, but why don't we keep moving forward, Ravi, and we can address these, and maybe you'll even address them.
Perfect. Okay. So I think the next part is a kind of hairy monster, right? So this is the really tricky part. So I want to spend some time, and the topic here is agility as a service or agility as a choice. So 10 questions for choice-based agile enablement. So let me give you a scenario, and I find myself in this situation very often. So imagine you've been just hired to enable agility in a company. There are some constraints. So there are maybe more than 100 teams. So one of my recent engagements, there were like 350 teams. But you only have a small team of enablers, whether you call it agile coaches or change agents, whatever you call it, right? The ratio of people who need to be served and the people who can enable and guide and serve them is skewed. And we want to eat our own dog food. We want to deliver incremental value, business value. Where do you even start, right? So I've got lessons from scars from the School of Hard Knocks. I've got lessons from, heavily influenced by leaders at Scrum.org, Ken, Patricia, Kurt. And there's one CXO, Michael Dunn. I've worked with him in 3 companies now, and he is one of the few executives I've worked with that really gets it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to unpack these over the course of the next few slides. So, from a School of Hard Knocks perspective, as I mentioned, recently I was Enterprise Agile coach for a company with 350 teams in 3 continents. And I've also introduced, scaled from 10 teams to 350 teams, right? And in any company, there's a wide spectrum. There are some people who love Agile, and there are some who just hate it. It's like over my dead body. This is yet another fad. This too shall pass, right? There's never enough people. There's never enough time. And there's a temptation to think of like B.B. Watts. I wrote a blog about this, and the blog is, I give an analogy like Aesop's fable about a lawn service. So big bang, waterfall, agile transformation. And recently, there was a recruiter who was talking to me and said, hey, can you help us be an agile coach for our company? And we've got this really nice strategy. We wrote a blog about it. We're going to roll out agile in waves. So we're going to create a nice project plan. We'll have nice Gantt charts. We're going to have a target 100% agile transformation complete date. We're going to monitor with red, yellow, green, percentage transformed, and then you just rinse and repeat until we're 100% transformed. Usually it's within 1 year. And this kind of illustrates the typical mindset that maybe many companies have in terms of agility. And this defeats the whole purpose. When I read a blog like this or I see a plan like this, it immediately tells me they may not have completely understood what it means to be agile. So I've got, lots of lessons from those kind of experiences. One thing that I like about Scrum.org, and which is a very counterintuitive thinking, is what I learned from Kurt and Patricia and Ken is, let's first talk about why are we scaling. Are we trying to scale the output of business value, or are we trying to scale the number of bodies who are following agile rituals? Okay, and are we convinced that we have extracted the maximum possible business value at the current scale before we throw time and money at increasing the number of bodies or increasing the scale? And here's a scary and politically very kind of polarizing question. What if we reduce scale? So this is counterintuitive. What if we can get more value by reducing the number of bodies, the number of people practicing the agile rituals, right? What if we're very selective and we only invite or allow people to self-select in terms of who wants to be part of this movement? And is it possible, just like you have platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, can you offer agility as a service, right? And I think the last source of kind of insight was Michael. And whenever I work with Michael, there's something that is, 3 companies, there's something that's constant. He wants agility as a choice. And I remember one conversation I had with him. He said, look, Ravi, I want to put I believe in these agile principles and values and the complementary practices and tools. I just want to leave these tools on the table. I want to make them available. And, maybe somebody's going to come and walk over to the table and pick up one of these tools or principles and values and say, this is interesting. How does this work? And maybe you want to try that. And that's when, if you have a coach or a scrum master to say, hey, if you're interested, I'd be happy to help you, right? So that's more, that's more of a pull model versus a top-down push, right? It's not agility as a mandate. It's agility as a choice and being ready to serve when the team is hungry. So these 3 kind of sources of experience have deeply influenced my thinking about how to enable agility in a large company. And there are 5 key lessons. Lesson number 1 is we have to segment our kind of marketplace, right? Our target customer base. And you've got to segment based on their hunger and how strategic they are to business value. And perhaps there's a 3rd dimension of agile maturity. So how do you do this? How do you, if you have 100 plus teams or 300 teams, how do you segment your customer base or your target set based on interest and value? And how do you gauge, are they interested or not? How do you gauge technical maturity, business maturity, and cultural maturity? So I've created a simple 4-quadrant view. So let's say the x-axis is Agile aversion on the left, so and Agile hunger on the right. Okay, the y-axis is strategic relevance. So the higher you go, the more strategic this team is, or this area is to our business, and the lower you go on the y-axis, the less strategic. So the top right quadrant is teams that are extremely strategic and they're extremely hungry. They believe in agility. They're hungry for it. The bottom right is they are hungry, but maybe they're not that strategic. But they're willing to do, especially on the right, they're willing to do whatever it takes to adopt agility. On the top left, maybe there are products and teams that are very strategic, but they just hate Agile, right, on the top left. And the bottom left is they hate Agile, it's just not compatible, and it's not strategic to the business. Okay, so we've got some kind of segmentation, and I use some kind of color scheme to kind of indicate what's our sweet spot, right? Where do we want to focus our energies, especially given that time and money is scarce. Okay, so that was segmentation. Lesson number 2 from the School of Hard Knocks and other sources was you have to be focused. You have to be very intentional and surgical about which teams you're focusing on, right? And there is a balancing act here, right? The pendulum can swing too far. One is there might be some teams that are hungry, but you may say, well, they're not strategic. Could we disengage them or demoralize them? On the other hand, if we spend too much time focusing on people who hate Agile, is like, get out of my way, let me do my work, I'm not interested, then those who are truly interested, or the enablers or the coaches, they get burned out because every day they're coming to work and they're just being disrespected or not valued by the people they're trying to help, right? So that this can backfire. So you've got to manage these risks, right? That's the art and craft of enabling agility. So how do you manage these risks using the 4 quadrants that I outlined? So one is, if you were to rank the backlog, perhaps you could focus on the top right quadrant, those who are strategic and those who are ready to do what it takes. The next area in the backlog or category might be those who may not be as strategic, but they are hungry and they truly believe in Agile. Maybe number 3 could be those who are strategic, but they're not interested, and you probably want to ignore, you don't want to waste time and money on people who are neither strategic nor interested, right? So this is one possible way where you start segmenting your target space, and then you start ranking them, okay? So lesson number 3, how can we eat our own dog food and empirically measure value, right? There might be some ineffective metrics for agility like velocity, right? You can easily game velocity, everybody knows that. Are there any better indicators? There will always be a risk of suboptimal behavior because, whenever you start measuring something like the Heisenberg's principle of uncertainty, right? You start changing the very ecosystem you're measuring. So you have to be very careful. And this is where evidence-based management comes in. And you combine it with 4 disciplines of execution, like I mentioned before. And Scrum.org is suggesting the key value areas and some illustrative metrics. So you don't have to use these, but they are trying to illustrate the level at which you might be thinking. And notice you don't have velocity there. Okay. And you have to be incremental, right? So many companies, I've heard the conversation that, well, we are a large company, it takes time to move a big ship, and after 5 years, we're going to be agile, and that's when you start getting the value. But that's like classical waterfall, big bang thinking, right? So can we challenge ourselves to say, no, that's not good enough? If teams can deliver incremental value in 30 days or less, why cannot the transformation deliver some measurable incremental value in 30 days or less, right? Why should we take the easy way out and start making exceptions for agile transformation, right? What's the right size of the time box? 2 weeks for organizational transformation, maybe some early indicators might be too less, maybe 3 months or 6 months or 12 months might be too long. So I'm inviting you to explore these questions. And I like agility path and evidence-based management, which creates kind of this build, measure, learn kind of loop where you create some surgical intervention, do some training, coaching, and then you measure, well, is it really moving the needle on organizational value? And if not, why not? And then you inspect and adapt and you rinse and repeat, right? So I like this kind of an approach. What we already do for software development, I'm challenging our community to do for agile transformation. Lesson number 4 is about offering agility as a service. So if you had a team of coaches or change agents or change leaders, enablers, what kind of services might they offer to help us accomplish these goals? this is the idea actually came from, Scrum.org thinking, agility as a service. So when I look back at my engagements, some services that are sorely needed are, measurement services. How do you empirically measure business agility? Portfolio management and strategy services, delivery frameworks, Scrum, Nexus, LESS, Kanban, XP, craftsmanship, right? The art and craft of software engineering, and culture and enablement. What should be a performance management system look like? What should be the seating arrangement? Should business and development sit in separate buildings? Should they be in separate continents? Should they be sitting next to each other? All of those decisions have a severe impact or a very critical impact on enablement of agility, right? The next is you have a bunch of services. Now you've got to package these services in a consumable form. So if you have a team of Agile coaches or change agents, how do you make the message accessible? So I've been in companies where I have people across the spectrum of Agile aversion to hunger, and they say, Ravi, tell me how can we engage with you, right? Give me some models and options so that I have say in the matter, right? So what kind of packages, bundles can you offer, right? We all like bundles, whether you're buying your internet service or TV or phone, you like some packages or bundles that allow you to choose what makes sense for you. So some bundles that are packages I'm suggesting, one is just the measurement service. And this is agnostic to your delivery framework. You use waterfall, agile, use whatever the heck you want, but I want you to measure business agility and what value you are providing to the company. And I like evidence-based management because it's agnostic to your delivery framework. You can use it for SAFe, you can use it for waterfall, Kanban, use it anywhere you want. Business value doesn't care about your delivery framework. Second package might be self-help. You've got blogs, you've got videos, you've got recommended books. Whenever you're ready, at whatever dosage you're ready, please come in and help yourself, and you control the frequency. The third is community events. So we're going to have community of practice events, brown bags, webinars. If you're interested, please join us. It's free to the whole company. Now, as you start going up this ladder or this staircase, the investment of the company in time and money and the investment of the participants is starting to ramp up, right? You can offer some trainings. You can offer some quick launch. So many of us coaches will do a 5-day quick launch, right? You give some training and then you stick around for a few days to help the team apply the training and optimize or launch Scrum. Now the next is now you're getting hungrier people. People are saying, hey, I need some more time. I've gone through steps 1 through 5. It's not enough. I'm ready to make the next level of commitment. Can you please help me, right? So people are now requesting the Agile coaches and enablers to say, I need some extra help. In level 7, what you're saying is I'm going to put my Agile coaches or change agents will be there 40 hours a week. I'm going to embed them with the team so that anytime you have a question, we're going to be there side by side. And level 8 is we will do whatever it takes to enable agility. Everything is on the table. Reorganization, flattening the org chart, looking at your performance review system, looking at your seating arrangements. That's the biggest, that's where you have the biggest, most skin in the game, right? And the other is build your own. So I've got 8 packages here. You don't like this. You want to mix and match. Okay, fine. Let's work with you to build your own package. Okay. So as you go from left to right, what you're noticing is there's a greater investment from the people who are participating and the people who are providing this service. Okay. So how can we now start combining these ideas? So I've got some segments. I've got 4 segments based on strategic relevance and agile interest, and I've got these 9 packages and some suggestions on how to apply these packages, right? So if you're looking at the bottom right quadrant, not strategic, not interested, you say, well, you know what, you've got these self-help ideas, you've got measurement services, you've got community events. If you're interested, please participate in them, right? Those who are interested, but maybe they're not as strategic, they can choose anything from all the way up to level 5, right? You can open up some slots for them in the training, company-wide training, and you can offer like 5 days quick launch or X time-boxed quick launch coaching enablement. Where you want to devote the most energy is on the top right quadrant, right? The entire bunch of packages should be available to them. And those who are averse but are strategic, I think you should recommend that they have at least use measurement, because ultimately, you should be accountable to the company to deliver value. And tell them, hey, do you want to design a custom package? You want to try a short experiment, right? So again, the key idea here is giving people choice. Nobody likes to be forced to do something that they don't want to, and you can't force any human being to do anything anyway, right? So you try to force them, the resistance will kind of go underground, but the resistance will be there, okay? And the last lesson was, like I said, allow choice, provide meaningful choices to teams. Let them make informed decisions, because that's where the buying happens. And make sure that the expectations are realistic and achievable, right? So I've been in companies where they say, oh, well, we'll do a 6-week agile wave, do some training, and then we'll be agile at the end of 6 weeks, and we'll magically reduce cycle time. All production defects are going to go. People will be motivated, inspired. We'll be like maybe Spotify or whoever is the fad of the month, okay? So tying all of these ideas together, this is a kind of approach that I'm recommending to you, right? Imagine you're talking to a team, and they've expressed some interest. Hey, we want to be more agile. Can you please help us? And imagine you're a member of the Agile enablement organization. You're an Agile coach or a change agent. The first question that we typically like to ask them is, tell me where you want to be. Tell me why. Tell me what's your target state. What's your system optimization goal? Now tell me, where are you right now? Okay, and what's the gap between where you are and where you want to be? Now let's talk about how long you want to take to bridge this gap, right? So by when do you want to get to your target state? Now this is the most important. What are you willing to invest? Are you willing to invest time? Are you willing to create some coaching agreements? You're going to honor them. Are you willing to use empiricism and face the data no matter how ugly it may be? Are you okay being challenged? Because many times, people invite Agile coaches to say, here's what you are going to tell me. And that's all. I don't need a coach. I need you to validate my pre-existing beliefs, and your job is to be my rubber stamp, right? So this is a good way to figure out, is there a gap between what they want, how soon they want it, and what they're willing to invest? It's like, I want to have like a mixed martial arts kind of body, but I'm not willing to go to the gym. Or, I want to win the MMA championship, but I'm not going to change my diet. I'm not going to exercise, right? So you start noticing a gap between their desired goal and what they're willing to invest. And you start asking them the question, are you ready to attend training? Will you make time to get coached? Are you willing to make changes in your business approach, your business model? Are you willing to upgrade your technology, maybe go to the cloud? You're willing to change your culture? Are you willing to change the way you sit, change your org chart? And are you willing to change your performance management? And at some point in this spectrum, people will say, this is non-negotiable. I'm not going to, everything to the left of the spectrum is okay, and to the right is non-negotiable. So this gives you a sense for, is there a gap between what they want and what they're willing to do? And now you start telling them, well, here are some services that our enablement organization offers. We can help you with clarify your business outcomes, measurement. We can help you create some scoreboards. We can help you with clarify your strategy and portfolio management. We can help you with delivery frameworks, software craftsmanship, and culture. And based on this, we've created some bundles for you. So tell me which of these bundles make sense. So we can offer a measurement bundle. We'll help you create some scoreboards for measuring business agility. We've got a self-help bundle. We've got blogs and videos, books you can look at your convenience. We've got community events. We've got training. We can do a quick launch. We can come in. You can come to us. We'll design maybe on request every now and then, for intentional surgical coaching. We can be embedded with you. We can be there for full-on transformation, or you can build your own. So tell me, what package are you going to choose? Okay. And the most important is, how can we make sure we're not wasting company time and money with Agile tools, training, coaching, without a feedback loop to tell us, is it truly generating value or not, right? So how are we going to create a feedback loop so that we don't throw good money after bad money, right? How are we going to apply Scrum to the transformation? Now, if you're a team of Agile coaches, Agile enablement, change agents, before you start building your own framework, you've got to see what kind of reusable options are there. Just like you don't start building your own API, right? First thing is you see, is there any open source reusable API? You don't want a not invented here mindset, right? So you start scanning the ecosystem, the market to see what's available. Instead of me creating my own custom software delivery framework for my company, are there reusable frameworks? Are there assessments to validate the expertise and knowledge of my team members? Is there some on-demand training Are there workshops? Are there coaches, consulting, partnerships? And then you have a question, am I going to build some of these? Am I going to buy these? Am I going to customize these, right? So if from an agile enablement perspective, you have a choice. How much company time do you want to invest building your own frameworks, your own assessments, your training versus buying them and versus customizing them? Okay. So in a nutshell, this is like a more choice-based approach where you're designing your agile transformation and you're giving plenty of choice to your target customers and allowing them to choose how, if, how, and when they engage. Okay. So just a quick recap. I spoke about the 3 teachers that have influenced me: the School of Hard Knocks, the thought leaders at Scrum.org, the inspiring CXO I've worked with in 3 companies. My 5 key lessons: you've got to segment based on agile interest and value. You've got to be very focused on who you're helping the most. You've got to eat your own dog food, create measurable incremental business value, diversify your services and packages, and allow choice in the matter. Okay. So quick recap: the 10 questions that the 10 choices I want you to consider. Ask your team members, where do you want to be, why, where are you today, what's the gap, when do you want to get there, what are you willing to invest, right? How much skin in the game are you willing to have? And what services should my agile enablement team offer? How can I bundle them in easy to understand and easy to consume packages? Let my teams choose a package that suits them. Make sure that we have some kind of an information radiators and scoreboards to tell us, are we moving in the right direction? Don't try to build everything yourself. Try to have reusable services and packages that are out there in the industry, and decide what you want to build, what you want to buy, where you want to customize. Okay, so we covered a lot of ground there. I've got a blog on this topic. If you're interested, connect with me on either of these topics on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook. And now I'll take questions, part 2, or even any questions for part 1. So Eric, any questions for me?
We do, and please keep them coming in as we go. So Ravi, here's a fun one for you, because I know you'll enjoy this. How do you distinguish between a Scrum Master and an Agile coach?
How do you distinguish? I don't know if I distinguish them. I mean, I feel a Scrum Master must be a coach, and Scrum Master can have different stances, right? Sometimes you have a coaching stance, and if you look at proactive coaching stances, people are naturally creative, powerful, resourceful, and whole. So there are times when a Scrum Master is a coach, and then Scrum Master sometimes is an expert in the rules of Scrum and making sure Scrum is understood and enacted. So I feel that a Scrum Master is an Agile coach. Now, in the industry, sometimes we have started using Agile coach to refer to people who may enable other Scrum Masters and other Scrum teams. And there might be, team level coach and program coach and enterprise coach. But in essence, I think I don't see that much of a difference. In essence, the heart of it, it's probably the same. Perhaps over time, as you have more experience, a Scrum Master's ability to enable change at a larger, as the sphere of influence increases, perhaps one graduates to the next level of Scrum Mastery or coaching. But anyway, those are my thoughts.
Yeah, so I had an unfair advantage that I've seen this question sitting here for a little while, so I gave it some thought as well. And to me, a Scrum Master is a coach, but a coach may not be a Scrum Master. A Scrum Master is a distinct role on the Scrum team. A Scrum Master is somebody responsible for being that servant leader on that team, or maybe spanned across multiple Scrum teams, and they have a very distinct role and a set of responsibilities. On the other hand, an Agile coach might just be in there to help Scrum Masters and train them up. They may be in there to do other types of things as well. Now, as a Scrum Master, part of your job, as you just said, Ravi, is to be a coach. But a coach does not necessarily have to be a Scrum Master.
Have to be. That's a good distinction. Very, very true. Good distinction. Yeah, agreed.
But I did have the unfair advantage of seeing that question a little while ago. So some other ones that have come in, and you may have addressed some of this. I think you actually did in the second part. It came in late at the end of the first part. Are there any common scorecards that you've used that can be applied to some of what you've talked about?
Yeah, the scorecards, I mean, I usually start with, the Scrum.org evidence-based management scorecard, and I just modify the name, the way I position it to clients. So one is conceived value, and there we have the evidence-based management indicators like product usage, release, the release index, what percentage of customers are on the latest release, and so on. I use a set of metrics for deliver value, which is cycle time, concept to cash, and then we have the other evidence-based management indicators like stabilization, release stabilization time, and so on. And then I use a key value area called sustained value, which is employee satisfaction or employee NPS, maybe customer NPS or partner NPS, right? So I do have some sample scoreboards. If anybody is interested, you can shoot me a mail or just send me a message on Twitter. But there's an awesome webinar by Don McGreal, who is our fellow PST. He is, I think, ScrumPulse episode number 5 is about Agile metrics. So if you want to see an integrated scoreboard, Don has created an amazing scoreboard which integrates many of these metrics, and he will actually show it to you, and maybe he'll even share it with you. So I would encourage people to watch episode 5 of ScrumPulse, and then if you have questions, comments, reach out to me, Eric, or Don, and then we might be able to give you some mock scoreboards.
So another question that's come in, and I'll paraphrase a little bit, but there's kind of two types of people. There's people who have Agile hunger, and then there's others who have Agile resistance. So what do you do in the case that these segments are individuals on the team level? They're often mixed together of different members. So you've got some people who want to learn and are hungry for Agile. You've got others who are resisting. So how do you deal with these different scenarios, in your opinion?
One thing I try to do is I try to align them or try to clarify what is the elevating goal here. So one of the Scrum values is commitment, and it's commitment to the team goal. So my individual goal is not as important, or who cares about my individual goal or your goal, right? We want to have people who are aligned with the team goal. So one of the things I want to do, I try to frame the conversation in terms of how are these choices or these personal preferences impacting our shared unifying team goal. And Ken often said, I remember in my Scrum Master training, Ken would say, look, it's not about good or bad. It's about effective or ineffective. Right? Or I attended Craig Larman's training, and he's talking about consistent or inconsistent with your team goals. So instead of getting stuck in a religious or a dogmatic debate about I hate Agile or I love Agile, it's more about which of these, we are at a crossroad, and which of these roads is more effective or ineffective with respect to our unifying goals. Right? And Ken says, look, Scrum is about increasing value, decreasing waste, manage risk. Okay, so which of these roads will better help us manage this? And many things are possible. Sometimes it's possible they have valid concerns, and we need to give those who have concerns, we need to give them an opportunity to express their concerns in a constructive way and to frame their concerns in terms of our unifying goal. And I think that's where I would start. And I think the first thing that I would do is from a being perspective, right? There's a being, knowing, doing kind of cycle. As someone who firmly believes in Agile, I need to manage my own emotions and be mindful of my emotions. When I was a more naive Agile coach than I am now, I would find myself getting very defensive because Agile is like my baby. I believe in it, and when someone resists it, I feel I get defensive. Now, the moment as a coach I get defensive, they sense the body language change, and then we get stuck in a negative spiral. So if the question is, what do you do when you have a mixture? I would say first, be mindful of your own reactions. And second, have a value neutral conversation without making anybody feel bad or defensive. And let's try to understand them, right? So I was listening to a book by Peter Senge called The Fifth Discipline. And he was talking about the distinction between dialogue and discussion. So he's saying dialogue is a situation or is a mindset. You're not trying to assert or defend your position. You're trying to explore. You're suspending your assumptions and beliefs. You're trying to explore. Hey, help me understand. I know you care for our company. I want to understand your perspective. I may have a blind spot. And discussion is where you're fighting for your position. You're asserting you want to win, right? So what I would recommend is be very intentional as a coach that you're in a space of discussion, because people are going to monitor your behavior, your body language. And your job, I think, is to create safety and safe exploration and understand. And based on what you uncover, who knows? I mean, use empiricism and then take the next step.
Great. Thank you, Ravi. If we go to the next slide, I think we're about out of time. The questions have been great. Thank you very much again for the answers as well. I think this has been a great conversation. If you want to continue to connect with our community, you can certainly reach out to Ravi. Check out the forums on our website at scrum.org/forum. There's lots of people always willing to answer your questions, and there's lots of content and information out there to continue to learn from. We're always putting up new blogs, other resources like videos and so on. Check them out. Keep learning. It's all about learning and keeping our momentum going within your organizations. If you stay stagnant and we stop learning, then we're in a lot of trouble. Next slide.
Thank you. Thank you, Eric.
And with that, thank you, Ravi. Thank you, audience, and have a great rest of your day.
Come on. Thanks.